You know that your team sucks and mine is great. It's time for AFFL hate. Gonna make them pits, gonna make them mad. I'm gonna do them dirty. Holy shit, is this exciting. Another season of AFFL football. It's the 2014 season preview, and you might scoff and think, this is useless, but let me remind you, last year I correctly tagged 5 of the 6 playoff teams. So sit down and listen up, find out whether you'll be playing in the postseason or not. Save yourself a lot of time. And Brian Barker, I am not going to tell you at which minute and second the preview of your team starts. You're going to have to go through this whole thing to find it. Let's start off with the funniest team this year, Lothbrock, or as Gary does not want you to call them, Lothbroke. Thanks to a wild draft pick trading binge in 2013, Gary dominated the 2014 draft with many hilariously bad picks. Gary now goes into the cut-down session with 23 rostered players. You know, we all complained about Tim taking time at the draft, and rightfully so, but Gary took 49 minutes and 12 seconds to make his picks. He took 5 minutes and 34 seconds to make his first overall pick, Bishop Sankey. According to Gary, Bishop Sankey was the number 1 guy available on his sheet, which sounds to me more like an indictment of the sheet than a defense of the pick. Bishop Sankey is not even the number 1 guy on the Tennessee Titans sheets right now. Thank you, by the way, Gary, for letting me have Alshon Jeffrey. So, as you might have guessed, Lothbrock is not going to make the playoffs this year. We are starting off this podcast with the dregs of the league, and Gary is certainly at the top of that list. Of course, with 23 players on the roster, you might expect some position redundancies. That is the case here. He has 3 quarterbacks. Not satisfied with franchise player Andrew Luck. Not satisfied with college draftee Teddy Bridgewater. Gary went out and got Alex Smith in the 3rd round. And let me tell you, after the draft, we hung around the flashing electronic dystopia of Dave and Buster, and Gary tried very hard to get me to agree that Alex Smith was the best possible pick for his team. You may be surprised to find out that I would not agree to that, because to me, Gary's going to play Andrew Luck every week, except when he's on his bye, and really might even be better off starting Andrew Luck on his bye. Gary's argument was, who am I going to draft besides Alex Smith that's going to help my team more than Alex Smith? But a quick look at the draft result shows that every single player picked after Alex Smith would be more helpful to Gary's team than Smith. Of course, he's desperately trying to trade Bridgewater to open up that contract spot. He's desperately trying to trade Maurice Jones-Drew because Maurice Jones-Drew is costing him $1.52 on his contract, whereas he would cost anybody else 93 cents. By the way, if you trade for either one of those guys, not only are you dumb, you're probably giving Gary a 2015 draft pick, which means we're going to be sitting there a long time again next year. Looking through the rest of this lineup, Toby Gerhart, Danny Woodhead, Julian Edelman. A little bit of a theme going on here with this team. The theme is that it's white and terrible. Gary is set at quarterback, of course, with Andrew Luck. That's nice to have. But his backfield on opening day is going to be Gerhart and Sankey, which is terrible. Garcon's pretty good, but he's going to have fewer catches this year. Different offense, more guys involved. Cordero Patterson, nice pick. Might work out. Probably going to get a 3-year contract if Gary can figure out how to get rid of Bridgewater. Just cut him. And Julius Thomas, I don't think he's going to be as good as he was last year. Remember, he did a lot of damage in a few games. The rest of the season wasn't that hot. Jeremy Hill, he's got the backup for the Bengals. Darren McFadden, he's got the backup for the Raiders. Trey Mason, he's got the backup for the Rams. Christine Michael, he's got the backup for the Seahawks. Stephon Taylor, he's got the 3rd backup for the Cardinals. Woodhead, he's got the backup for the Chargers. Devontae Adams, he's got the 6th wide receiver for Green Bay. Terrence Williams, got the number 2 receiver in Dallas. This is just really Travis Shamockery of a bad team. This team is awful. It's going nowhere. It's not making the playoffs. And please, 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 do not take any of Gary's terrible, terrible, terrible trade offers. He's going to have to cut these guys eventually. You don't need to give up your picks for them. You can pick better guys. And if you do make a trade, Gary's just going to waste the pick anyways. So keep it to yourself. Maybe there's something you can do with it. Now, another team that's not going to make the playoffs this year. The new old guy. The blogging bitch beater. You notice this team was named the Ass Tanners. I don't mean to sound megalomaniacal, but Christian changed his team name to the blogging bitch beaters as a shot at me because we were exchanging emails yesterday about how much he needs to trade for AJ Green. He disagreed. He said, now I see why you're such a blogging bitch. And since we're in the mood for big words, I don't mean to be didactic, but this is a podcast, not a blog. Podcast has audio, blog has words. Some of these subtle variations in technology can be difficult to understand, I'm well aware. Now, Christian was handed a bit of a dumpster fire of a team, which is appropriate considering the garbage pile he left me when I came into the league. Franchise player Chris Johnson is terrible. Russell Wilson on an expiring contract. CJ Spiller on an expiring contract. Josh Gordon was on an expiring contract, but he upgraded Josh Gordon to no Sean Moreno. It's an upgrade because even though Moreno is the backup in Miami now, he still might play this year, unlike Gordon. Wide receiver situation for the blogging bitch beaters, the Triple B, is not terrible. Colston, Cruz, pretty good guys. Percy Harvin, he's going to be good for those 3 games he plays until he gets concussed. Matt Ryan might be okay. He'll probably start over Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, the classic, better in real life than fantasy quarterback. But when you look at the backfield, LeGarrette Blount, no Sean Moreno, Chris Ivory, Chris Johnson, CJ Spiller, all backups, all number 2 guys. Well, I mean, one of Ivory or Johnson will be the number 1 guy, but for the Jets, so that is effectively a number 2 guy. Just not a lot of depth on this team, unless you count garbage as depth. Some pretty deep garbage on this team. The blogging bitch beaters, the Triple Bs, they are not making the playoffs. Speaking of Alberts that are not making the playoffs, Timmy doesn't have any friends. Scott Albert, not making the playoffs. This team is offensive, smelling. I mean, they smell bad. I know Scott won the title last year, but this is taking on Florida Marlin proportions where the following season is just a disaster. I mean, Scott's team is so bad, he might not win the title for another 25 years. There is a lot of disaster going on here. I really don't even know where to begin with talking about how bad Scott's team is. I mean, I guess you got to start at the top and work your way down. And this team is topped by both Jets quarterbacks, Geno Smith and Michael Vick. By the way, Scott has bet me $5 that Geno Smith will have more points this year than Colin Kaepernick. We'll see how that one goes. I assume I have to wait to the end of the season to officially collect the money, even though it's as good as spent now. Michael Vick openly saying he's happy to be a backup now and not have to work as hard and save his body. So that's pretty good. And I guess Scott had a last-second moment of realization where he's like, oh my God, I have both Jets quarterbacks. Let me go out and get Carson Palmer. Let me stop the bleeding here a little bit. Backfield is, of course, strong with Alfred Morris and Adrian Peterson. Pierre Thomas there. He's going to have at least 2 good games this year. Hopefully Scott gets him in the lineup for both of those. But the wide receiving core, oh my goodness. Danny Amendola, he's already hurt, I'm sure. Kendall Wright, I mean, anytime you can get the Titans' number 1 receiver, you got to do it. Martavis Bryant, yep, he's going to be good in 3 years. Stephen Hill, he's not good at football. Kenny Stills, he'll catch a touchdown this year. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I don't know how many more he'll have beyond that. I mean, the main thing that Scott's missing from this team are guys that are good at football. He does have a Steelers defense locked up under contract, so that's great. That's a leg up. That's a big advantage there. But this team, I tell you what, not only are they not making the playoffs, not only are they not defending their title, 10 losses this year for Timmy doesn't have any friends. That's how bad this team is. So Alberts, your family makes up 25% of the league. You're going to make up 50% of the teams that missed the playoffs this year. So who's a non-Albert missing the playoffs? Well, how about Crafton's own Larry Shucht, the Whitechapel Rippers? That's right. You heard me. Even though the CBS Auto article draft review said the Whitechapel Rippers are going to have the most points in the league this year, I say no. I say this team's missing the playoffs. I say this team is too thin. Doug Martin, Gio Bernard, looking good on paper. I think a little overrated. Not going to score as much as people think. Shane Vereen, never won a running back from that Patriots situation. And then you look at the receivers. Yeah, Julio, of course, is a megastar. He'll be back this year. I'm sure he will not hurt his right foot for the 3rd season in a row. I'm sure everything's fine there. Nothing to worry about. But after that, Brandon Cooks, Emmanuel Sanders, Doug Baldwin, DeAndre Hopkins, all secondary options, not guys that you can count on week in and week out. Matthew Stafford should put up points, but he'll also put up interceptions. Sam Bradford, backup QB, already hurt. Let's turn to the 3rd backup QB, Andy Dalton, another interception machine. It's going to really sting this year when Larry loses a game because a late interception takes 2 points off his total and he loses by 1. There's just not a lot going on with this team, not enough depth-wise that if he loses a Martin or a Bernard or a Julio, there's nobody left to pick up the slack. This team's going to be in trouble. They're going to be eliminated on the final week of the season, not make the playoffs. And they put up 71 points in the doubleheader, lose both ends of the double dip, miss the playoffs by 1 game. It's going to hurt. It's going to sting. It's going to feel bad, but that's the way it goes. Now, let's get that ashy, bitter, nasty taste out of our mouth. Let's cleanse our palates with a refreshing citrus sorbet. Let's talk about the good teams, the teams that will make the playoffs this year. And why not start off with the best team, ISIS? First of all, the name thing. I know there's sort of a tyrannical, terroristic, religious organization sweeping through the Middle East with my name. I had the name first. The show Archer had it before me, and the Egyptian high priests had it before that. I'm not changing the name. By the way, you did notice that after a simple Google search, the ISIS militant group found my name, found my team, said, hey, sorry buddy, we're going to change it. They're now ISIL, I-S-I-L. Good for them. They're establishing a caliphate in the Middle East. I'm establishing a championship in the Midwest. This is the best team in the league this year. By far. Teams that I talked about not making the playoffs, they don't have the depth. They don't have the guys they can count on. They don't have the talent. They have a bunch of number 2 wide receivers. What about a team that has 4 of the top 10 wide receivers in the game? Green, Johnson, Cobb. And I was a little worried about who I was going to get with my first round pick. Fortunately, I have the depth to cover this up. Fortunately, I'm so good that I can reach for a guy with this number 7 pick. Maybe it'll work out. Maybe I can get something good. And then lo and behold, Alshon Jeffrey just falls on my lap. How could I say no? And if that's not enough for you, Eddie Lacy will be a top 3 running back this year. The man is a beast. He is why I am trying to move A.J. Green. I do want to franchise Lacy, but I'll tell you right now, if I can't move Green, I'm happy to ride this team out. I am happy to take the title home. And behind Lacy, Lamar Miller, starter in Miami, going to that Eagles offense, should surprise some people with some points. Joique Bell, number 1 guy in Detroit. Mark Ingram coming on strong. There are options. Justin Hunter could have a breakout season, but if not, oh, that's right. I already have 4 of the 10 best receivers in the league. By the way, everybody, I guess, forgot how good Randall Cobb was last year before he got hurt. And Kaepernick, oh, by the way, he had pretty much a broken foot all last season. That's why he didn't run as much, so he'll be back this year. In fact, if I don't win the title this year, I would say it's a fluke. I would say it's an upset. I would say it's an oddity. I mean, it's almost so much of a certainty that the only thing I really consider to be a challenge this year is trying to go undefeated, going 14-0. The only thing that might hold me back there is Week 9. Eddie Lacy, Alshon Jeffrey, Calvin Johnson, Joique Bell, Randall Cobb, Justin Hunter, all on a bye in Week 9. The guys who have a bye for me in Week 9 are better than most entire teams in this league. That's how deep the ISIS is. The ISIS will make the playoffs. The ISIS will win their division. The ISIS will dominate this league this year. And you guys will not like it, because I'll have a lot to say about it. Returning to the playoffs after a 2-year absence, Mike Barker, Riggins Riggs. Another hilarious draft night performance for a different reason. About halfway through the draft, Barker started thinking, oh man, I'm going to be way over the cap. Let me draft every rookie I can think of. Let me be cheap here. Let me save money. Then the training camp rosters come out, and he's $4 under the cap. Time for somebody to fire their team accountants. Not a great job there. Could have drafted some more skill instead of youth, but oh well. Here's the thing. Although this team is thin, although an injury or two would decimate this team, when you're rolling out Drew Brees, the number 1 overall pick, the lottery superstar, Matt Forte, Bernard Pierce for the first couple of games, Dez, Jordy, Jimmy Graham, you're going to be putting up a lot of points. Yes, it's true. Once Ray Rice is back and Pierce isn't the starter, there's a hole in the lineup. Yes, it's true that most of these rookies are going to have to be cut. Yes, it's true that he's going to need a trade or two. Yes, it's true, like I mentioned, an injury or two will completely decimate this team. But I say it stays healthy enough to roll through the league to the point where they get a wild card. They're not going to win the division or anything. 9-5, we're talking. But they're in. There's going to be a lot of points. There's going to be enough wins. This team is in the playoffs via the wild card. But winning the Central Division, the paragon of consistency in our league, There's two things you can count on from Brian Williams. He shows up on draft night, which is the only day of the year you see him in person, and he makes the playoffs. Now, it must be said that he needs to enjoy this year's playoffs, because with Zach Stacy expiring, Marshawn Lynch expiring, Brandon Marshall expiring, this is the last run for this team. Yeah, he's going to give Antonio Brown a contract, and he probably wants to move Lynch so he can give Brown a 3-year contract. But with Lynch, Marshall, Stacy, Antonio Brown, Crabtree, Rashad Jennings, or Fred Jackson, one of them will do enough for him each week. This is a deep team. Now, yeah, Cam has no receivers, not a great offensive line. He has trouble with his surgically repaired ankle. He has a fractured rib, so he's not going to run as much. Bry's team is so good, he's not even going to need Cam to do it. He's going to wrap up this division handily. He's going to win a lot of games this year. I mean, what else do you expect from Bry? And the other good break for Bry, Scott Myers no longer in his division. So instead of a guaranteed 2 losses this season, it's only 1 guaranteed loss. And that's going to make all the difference when it comes to winning this division. And by the way, Scott Myers' dominance of Bry is not just contained to the AFFL. After the draft, we went over to the Dave & Buster's bells and whistles area, as I mentioned. Scott Myers proceeded to whip Bry's ass and pop a shot about 8 times in a row, a couple of times doubling up his score. It was brutal. It was nasty. It was fun to watch. Scott Myers completely owns Bry. Now, there is one trouble spot for Bry here. Listen carefully to me here, because it's important that we don't all screw this up. If we work together, we can keep Bry on the ropes here. Bry right now is $1.88 over the cap. He needs to cut 2 players before the season starts. Right now he has 2 defenses, 2 kickers. He's got Nick Foles at $2. He's got Fred Jackson at $1.34. Those are all cut potentials. But here's the thing. If he cuts a kicker and a defense, yes, he gets himself under the cap, but only by about 30 cents, which means later in the season when he needs to cut a kicker, cut a defense, carry their salaries for a little bit, bring in a new kicker and a new defense, he's a little limited. He's going to be right up against the cap all year, okay? If he cuts Foles, because he can't afford to have an expensive backup quarterback, and Cam goes down, he's really boned. Brandon Marshall, on his expiring contract, is $2.56. Bry is going to try to move him this year. 1, to free up the money. 2, to free up the 3-year contract slot for Antonio Brown. And 3, because he's losing him after this year anyways. Do not trade Bry your 2015 draft picks for his players this year, because A, he's got the guys on the bench that can just slot in and not miss a beat. B, if you make Bry live with his mistakes now, he's going to be bad next year. He's going to miss the playoffs next year. He's probably going to put the division up for grabs next year, all right? If you, like me, are tired of seeing Brian Williams win every week, do not help him out this year with his trades, okay? Do not make some terrible Bill McCamey-esque trade for Arian Foster where you give away way too much for a guy who's constantly hurt and not good anymore, okay? Do not trade your first-round pick for Brandon Marshall, because I do not want to watch Bry have a great season and then take your first-round pick next year and redraft Brandon Marshall, all right? Let's stay strong. Let's stick together. Let's help each other out. And let's watch Bry go over the cliff at the end of the season. Do not bail him out. Now moving on to another playoff team, HGAC. I guess that's how it's pronounced. Maybe it's Czech. It's like Shashk. I have no idea what this team name is. It needs to be changed. It's moronic. But the team is good. Cutler, nice quarterback. Arian Foster. Again, I'm going to tell everybody what I told McCamey to his face via email. Arian Foster is hurt all the time. He's no longer good. The zone blocking scheme that he became a superstar under is gone with Gary Kubiak leaving town. His quarterback is now Ryan Fitzpatrick. He is essentially Chris Johnson last year, a.k.a. former star who now sucks. But McCamey is going to hold on to him for way too long because he got absolutely bamboozled, finagled in the trade he made with Bry last year. It was a terrible trade at the time. It's getting worse as time goes on. So he's going to desperately cling to Arian Foster, hoping he gets value, and ignoring very good and reasonable trade offers for A.J. Green. But DeMarco Murray, number 2 overall pick in the draft, pretty good. The 6 weeks this season that Foster and Murray are both healthy and in the starting lineup, those are going to be good weeks for Shkak. for HGAC, Hagak. There are no good options for this team name. Cutler, he'll probably get hurt as well. But again, there's going to be some good weeks. Golden Tate, number 2 in Detroit. Nice option. Demaryius Thomas, of course. Some people talking about him being the number 1 receiver overall this year. That's not possible, of course, because he's not on my team. But Torrey Smith is nice. Terrence West, Andre Williams, a couple of young backs that could be coming on as the season moves on. Now, again, part of fantasy football is injuries. We could say this about every team. Yes, if Cutler, Foster, and Murray all get hurt at the same time, Zgak will not be as good. But as it stands right now, they're a wild card team. So now, we have 4 stink teams. We have 4 sweet teams. That leaves us with 4 teams right in the creamy middle. What's going to happen to those guys this year? The 4 teams that we're not sure about. Let's start with Animal House. First of all, saw Scott Myers in person at the draft. He is a real person. I didn't check his ID. It's possible an actor played the role of Scott Myers as a fill-in for Bry to continue running this team on the side. But for all we know, Scott Myers is real, is a person, did draft this team, and is incredible at Pop-A-Shot. Now, as for the team, Andre Johnson, franchise player, $2.58. That's a lot of money for a guy on the backside of his career whose quarterback is Ryan Fitzpatrick. But hey, if you don't want A.J. Green, that's your business. Jamal Charles, last year of his contract, I'm sure he won't get hurt this year. David Wilson, last year of his contract, he did get hurt this year. He's out of the league. Smart move, by the way, by Scott, putting him on IR. Let the contract expire. Don't take the cap hit. That's some good white-collar activity. Leave it to an accountant to figure that one out. Le'Veon Bell. Maybe not going to be as good as we thought this year. Let's just say it was looking like Scott could cut Johnson, franchise Jamal, extend Le'Veon for another year, but I don't know if that's going to happen. A couple of draft day trades. Scott picks up Roddy White and Ben Tate. Not bad. He's also got Ryan Matthews. He's got Tom Brady at quarterback. He's got Jeremy Maclin, who doesn't miss whole games. He misses half of games because he gets hurt during the game and then comes back. He's a little soft and weird. So you're thinking, hey, this team got a lot of guys I've heard of on it. This must be a pretty good team. It's not bad. It's not bad. Like I said, Bell is okay. Charles is going to be great. Not as great as last year, but great. Ryan Matthews, up and down, disappointing. Johnson and White, they're too old. They're on the downside. He's also got Dwayne Bowe. So, it's one of those type of teams. We'll see. We'll see on this team. We'll see. Let's put them aside for a second. Little baby Jesus. Their second year in the league. 2 years, 2 drafts. Still no picks or input from Joe. This is Mike's team. Don't be fooled. This is not a partnership. It's a dictatorship. And let me tell you, this team might have something going on here. Franchise player Aaron Rodgers, if they get 16 games out of him. Gronk, if he comes back late in the season, that's a nice pick. Trent Richardson, $1.71 right now. Got this year and next year left on that guy. It's time to cut bait on him. He's got to go. Fitz and Keenan Allen, everybody's moving on from Larry Fitzgerald to Michael Floyd, but he's still decent, and Allen had a great rookie year. Andre Ellington, the number 3 overall pick. I like this a lot. Mike Sembrat, he says, I got a young team. I'm building. I'm going to go for the potential. I'm going to go for the guy that could break out, the guy that could blow up. I'm going to take a chance here. That's smart. That's risky. I like it. The rest of the lineup, Jared Boykins, James Jones, Brandon LaFell, Kenbrell Tompkins. Those are all 3rd and 4th options on their team. Wes Welker, concussed again before the season even starts, probably going to be forced to retire. Maybe Goodell can give him a, quote, 16-game suspension. I know it's a lot harder for Goodell to suspend the white players, but maybe for Welker's own health. His helmet is like the Great Gazoo at this point. It's picking up radio signals. It's not protecting his head. Sammy Watkins, maybe, rookie receiver. So, you look at this little baby Jesus team. Great skill in the starting lineup. Rodgers, Reggie Bush, Ellington, Keenan Allen, Fitzgerald, Gronkowski. The bench is terrible. There is no bench. If this was a house, the basement is moldy and rotten. There's nothing supporting it. If that starting lineup can hold. It's always runny in Philadelphia. One of the most clever team names in the league. Just not saying much. The pop culture reference for this team is only 5 years old. One of the fresher ones. Is this a good team or not? Well, slight problem at quarterback. Robert Griffin, last year of his contract, $1.10. Do you remember in the first year when Brian Barker picked Robert Griffin the 3rd, number 5 overall? and rode that wild rookie season to the playoffs. Yeah, he didn't win, but it was nice. It was a great ride. We'll never forget it. Last year, not so good. This year, he's trying to move Robert Griffin. He brought in Tony Romo to replace Robert Griffin. No faith in Robert Griffin. It's amazing how fast these things change. He's got Frank Gore and Steven Jackson in the backfield, so that's great. If you can have two of your starting running backs be a combined 66 years old, you got a great advantage in the NFL. He does have LaShawn McCoy. I'm going to throw something at you here, folks. Have a seat. Buckle up. Go out to your car, put this on your Bluetooth, have a seat and buckle up. Sean McCoy is going to get hurt this year. Sean McCoy is going to miss at least 8 games this year. I'm putting that out there now. You know why? Because he was the consensus #1 overall pick this year, and fantasy football is mentally exhausting, it's taxing, it's draining, it's emotionally powerful. LaShawn McCoy is guaranteed to get hurt this year. The receiving core, Eric Decker, Riley Cooper, interesting, 2 white receivers, okay. Vincent Jackson, perennially one of the most expensive players in the AFFL, but he's pretty good. Taking a chance on Tavon Austin. Ask Mike Sembrad how that works out. You're not going to be enjoying that. Josh Gordon. Genius trade. Genius trade here. I'm sorry that he beat me to the punch. About 28 cents for Josh. If it turns out that he plays the last 8 games of the season, it's a hell of a pickup. Hell of a pickup. Reggie Wayne. This is not a bad team. There's something going on here. You could put Romo, McCoy, and then go 4 wides with Decker, Jackson, Wayne, maybe Tavon. If you do get Josh Gordon at the end there, this is not a bad team. I do not hate this team. Now, let's save the worst for last. Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. Now, Timmy, one of the most interesting people in the league. Gary might be the most interesting. I can understand Timmy is put upon a little bit. I can understand that he relishes any opportunity he gets to have the moral and intellectual high position. It must be rare for him. So when it does happen, he milks it for all he gets. I got an email virus last week. Judging from Timmy's reaction, you would have think I accidentally set my house on fire trying to kill a spider's nest. I'm not the patient zero of email viruses. I'm not the first person this happened to. I dump my contacts, I reset my password, contain the problem quickly. Though to listen to Timmy, you would have thought I was some grade school moron who can't even spell. And besides, I can assure you that no matter how many junk emails you got from me, watching them roll in is not as painful as sitting in Dave & Buster's for 29 minutes and 44 seconds while you're waiting for Timmy to make his first round draft pick. The day of the draft, when Timmy sent his note, I might be at work until 8 because of coverage issues. I sent a note to Gary on the side. I was like, listen, put a 5-minute cap on this goon. If he doesn't pick, he gets the best player available, and we move on with our lives. Now, the first round, taking 30 minutes to make your draft is pretty ridiculous. Pretty much a slap in the face to everyone. As it worked out, we all assumed Timmy would be doing that, so we ordered our food, which came when it was Timmy's turn to draft, and we all got to eat and drink. That was great. The other bonus was that he picked Peyton Manning. That means Alshon Jeffrey fell to me, of course because of Gary's Bishop Sankey involvement, so I don't hate it. But still, it's a little much to ask of other people to sit there for 29 minutes while you make a decision. In the second round, Gary picks in 2 minutes. Little Baby Jesus picks in 1 minute. Bry takes 32 seconds. Timmy, 10 minutes, 11 seconds. Why are we sitting around waiting for Timmy? In the fourth round, 1 second, because he auto-drafted Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, yeah, you take Peyton Manning in the first round. You might want to take another quarterback in the third round. Sure, why not? But you know what? At least auto-draft only took a second. In the fourth round, Jason Witten. Auto-draft, 0 seconds. You have a franchise player who's a tight end? You might want to get a backup tight end. Thank you, auto-draft. You are making a lot of sense. You're not doing anything more ridiculous than Timmy would. In fact, the only reason we knew Timmy wasn't actually making these dumb picks, I would argue you should never draft a defense. I would argue you should only draft players and use your 3 camp invites to take your kicker and your defense there. Timmy would argue you should take a defense really early and make it the Jaguars defense. 2 picks later, Gary took the Patriots defense. Looked like a defensive run was going to start. Then everybody realized, oh wait, Timmy and Gary don't know what they're doing with their draft. We don't need defenses just yet. In the 6th round, 0 seconds for Kelvin Benjamin. Maybe Timmy's best pick of the draft. It was an auto pick. Round 7, we all sat around for 10 minutes and 50 seconds for a skipped pick. That was great. Round 8, hey everybody, Timmy's back. 9 seconds to draft Anquan Bolden. This was the only pick of the entire night that was fast and Tim's. Next round, Ruben Randall, 13 seconds. Now Tim is picking up speed. It's almost like he's paying attention to the draft now. This is great. Round 10, Phillip Rivers, 43 seconds. Why not? If you're drafting, if you're finally feeling it, why not get that third quarterback? Sure, it means you've just committed $7.62 to the quarterback position. Now you're $5.60 over the cap. You're going to be cutting at least one of those guys, if not two of them. But hey, why not do it? 11th round, Brian Hartline, 12 seconds. Sure, Brian Hartline will probably be on this team for 12 seconds. That's a great pick. All in all, Timmy closing his draft with Darius Haywood Bay. 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 7 seconds to make his draft pick. Now, I get it. Oh, my nephew's in town. I haven't seen him in so long. If it was the last night that your nephew was in town, I'm going to break some news to you. He was here for 4 days. He waited till the last night in town to tell you that he was coming. So he was hoping that you, quote, couldn't make it. Then he can say, at least I tried. He didn't tell you 4 days ago. All right? This was not planned. 2, it is a complete slap in the face to everyone in the league. To be that openly insulting to other people and their time is just unbelievable. It's awful. And I'm the one that defends you. I want you in the league for the comedy value of it. Everybody else in this league is ready to kick you out. If you got 11 guys that want nothing to do with you, that want to fire you from your job in the AFFL, don't make them waste an hour of their lives on your terrible, terrible picks. But here's the thing. Here's where it gets interesting. Timmy's team is not that bad this year. Timmy's team is in this 4-team bubble of mine. Peyton Manning and Monty Ball. That's a good one, too. Michael Floyd. He's supposed to be pretty good this year. Just Deshaun Jackson could be okay in Washington. Kelvin Benjamin, he's Cam's only option. There's nobody else. And Ray Rice, when he comes back from the 2-game suspension. Timmy could be rolling out a pretty good line. In fact, this team is pretty good. The only thing that would prevent this team from making the playoffs, now that I think about it, is Timmy somehow screwing it up. Which, of course, we can never rule out. Like if, say, he trades Peyton Manning to Scott for a 4th-round pick next year. Peyton Manning could carry Timmy's team. He should not give Peyton Manning away for nothing. Scott, of course, desperately needs a quarterback. But Timmy's actually in a position of power here. Timmy's better than Scott. Timmy should not be helping out Scott. The Monty Ball trade worked out perfectly for him. So we have these 4 bad teams. Loth Broke, the Triple Bs, Whitechapel Rippers. Timmy doesn't have any friends. We have 4 great teams. 1 great team, ISIS. 3 good teams, Riggins Riggs, Kangaroo Sold My Ball. Then we have these 4 other teams. Animal House, Little Baby Jesus. It's Always Runny in Philadelphia. Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. Of those 4 teams, 2 are going to be in. 2 are going to be out. What's going to happen? I know you guys can't wait until November to see the final results. I'm going to give them to you now, and I'm going to blow your minds. Because guess what? Animal House. It's Always Runny in Philadelphia. You're out. Sigmund and the Sea Monsters is making the playoffs this year. Little Baby Jesus is winning the Eastern Division this year. You know, before this draft a few weeks ago, Brian Barker and I looked at the divisions. We congratulated ourselves. Hey, we got McCamey in our division. We got Timmy in our division. We got an easy walk to the playoffs, man. Things are great. But then the draft happens, and look at this. Brian Barker's out of the playoffs. 3 of the 4 teams in the Western make the playoffs. This is the best division in the league, headed by the best team. And I'll say it again, Timmy is going to make the playoffs if he doesn't screw this team up. I don't know how he's going to get it under the cap when he's 580 over. I would start by just cutting Roethlisberger and Rivers, since Manning never misses a game. So there you have it, folks. Your division winners, ISIS, Kangaroo, Little Baby Jesus. Your wildcard team, Riggins Riggs, Hagak, Sigmund, and the Sea Monsters. I don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs beyond ISIS coming out on top and really rubbing it in badly after the championship. So there you go. Your 2014 AFFL season preview. This is what's going to happen. Let's break it up. Let's let it go forth. Let's get excited about Timmy's playoff potential. Oh my God!